Hey man, towards the talk. Like, share, subscribe to the page, hit the thumbs up button, like the content. So today I'm going to be watching another video of Kendrick's Savior song and why it's very significant today. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is a very important video, actually. And so stick with me. We're going to watch this video together. I'm going to try not to stop it too much. So people can enjoy it. And yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm going to come back and give my thoughts on everything. So before I get into that, you know the spill. Thank y'all for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If I haven't earned your subscription today, please subscribe. Thank y'all. I reached the milestone, 5,000 subs. And thank y'all for all the super chats. I really appreciate that. That really, really touched me, man. You know what I'm saying? Thank y'all. Appreciate it. So look, we're going to get into this video and we'll be back to discuss.
It's hard to look at someone like Kendrick Lamar without a crown on his head, especially after what took place over the last month. After dismantling Drake in the biggest rap battle of all time, Kendrick hosted his pop-out concert on Juneteenth, which united a city that hadn't been united for years. It's easy to combine an event like this with the impact of Kendrick's music and view him as an almost godlike figure. I think we can all agree how hard it is to get people to come together, and sometimes events like this can only happen when someone has as big a platform as Kendrick does. While it's cool that this was an indirect response to Drake talking about Kendrick getting no love in his hometown, Kendrick explains why he really wanted to have this concert.
Lost a lot of homies to this music, a lot of homies to the street, and for all of us to be on the stage together, unity from each side of LA, Crips, Bloods, Power Rules, this shit is special, man.
If his words sound familiar, it's because Tupac had the same mission to stop gang violence and unite the West Coast, and it's so poetic that Kendrick achieved this goal that one of his idols had, if not just for a night. In this video, we're going to dissect Kendrick Lamar's legacy, how he tried to save the world only to end up saving himself, and despite all the amazing things he's done, tell you why he is in fact not your savior.
Morale, give me high five, 2 times cynical defendant, judging my life.
If you've seen my
Yeah, so speaking on that, I keep telling people this. There's a difference between being born into the gang or just being a part of a gang. And on the West Coast, all up and down California, gangs. It's been gangs for years. People's family is born into it. Their mothers and fathers is in it. They're in it. It's a part of their culture. It's a part of their DNA. For him to have that, all of them on stage like that, that's a big deal. And I know a lot of people try to downplay it that's from the East Coast because y'all don't understand it because y'all wasn't born into that. You don't understand. Some of these people had hatred for each other for a long time. And to put their differences aside like that, especially men, that takes a lot for a man to put his differences aside that he totally believes in. It's like asking a Christian not to believe in Jesus. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. It's the same way that some of these people who are born into the gang life, that's how they feel. It's like you're telling them not to believe in Jesus. You got to understand that. So let's go.
Other videos in this series, we usually just dissect Kendrick's music song by song or lyric by lyric, but this time around things will be a little different. We'll still analyze Savior and jump into the lyrics, but this video will be more about the state of hip-hop leading up to the song and how Kendrick ended up here in the first place. To start, we need to go all the way back to 2010. Now, I know some people watching this are very young, including myself as I was just 10 at the time, but you didn't have to be there to know hip-hop was having a bit of a drought. You still had Goliaths like Kanye making his beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Eminem, Jay-Z, and Lil Wayne were still popular, Kid Cudi just got put on the map, and Drake was right there with him. Apart from the few artists I just mentioned, mainstream rap was really not in a good place from like 2006 to 2011. Obviously, there were a few classics that dropped, but compared to an era like the 90s and 2010s, there was a huge influx of artists that all sounded the same. These artists were mostly part of the bling era and had very short-lived careers, until Drake, J. Cole, when Kendrick came around, who else was really that big and stayed big for that long? Lil Wayne, Kanye, and Eminem, if we're just counting popularity, are probably the best answers, but these guys had already been making music for a while. Hip-hop really needed some new blood to come through and bring back that artistry that's showcased on albums we now consider classics. There are albums I like to call gateway albums. I call them this because they perfectly bridged two eras of music together by doing something new and exciting. Examples of this are Charlie by Charlie XCX and OK Computer by Radiohead. In this instance though, I want to talk about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. MBDTF kind of worked as the gate opener to allow these newer artists to pass through and elevate their careers, because if it didn't, I don't know if we'd have as clear a transition point between decades as we have now, at least for hip hop. This isn't a video about Kanye, but I felt it was important to highlight the significance of that record for how it affected the 2010s Big Three. It kind of brought concept albums back into the limelight of hip hop. Shuffle around a bit to 2011, you get Kendrick's Section.
But let me stop it right there. I don't think that my Dark Twisted Fantasy, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, was necessarily a concept album. I don't. I think it was an album that had some amazing songs on there. It was actually a classic. But I don't think it was a concept album. You know what I'm saying? If that's the case, then all Kanye West's albums are similar to that one. You would consider a concept, but it really wasn't a concept album. I believe Good Kid, Mad City came before My Dark Twisted Fantasy. I guess he's getting into that, but either way, this was a concept album too, Section 80. Let's go.
80, which was a pretty commercially successful album, but nothing compared to what he'd see later in his career. This album stood out as very good, and people definitely heard the potential, but I don't think anyone was really forecasting Kendrick to become the critically acclaimed artist he is now. Regardless, this album really put lyrical rap back on the map, and hip-hop was headed in the right direction. Before we go any further, let me just say I am not a hip-hop purist. There are a ton of melodic rappers out there I enjoy, and the term real hip-hop is an outdated phrase that doesn't apply to today's landscape of rap. However, going the other way, hip-hop was built on foundations of lyricism, and it's still one of the most important aspects of rap music. I mean, we just saw it in the form of rap beef, in which whoever writes the sharpest cutting lyrics is going to win that battle. While I definitely appreciate mumble rap amongst other subgenres, none of them would exist without lyrical rap first. This goes back to my point that the mid to late 2000s, the bling era really took over, and there wasn't much substance in the music, which is fine for that genre, but when it's the only thing coming out, it's an issue because the entire genre becomes boring. Nobody's innovating anymore. This is why the 2000s in terms of underground rap had so many classics, and apart from a couple mainstream artists, it was one of the weaker decades, at least in my opinion. Fast forward to 2012, this is when things really change and people begin to really follow Kendrick. Good Kid, Mad City is huge, but the most surprising thing is that it's a conscious rap album that broke into the mainstream. Not only is it a conscious rap album, but a concept album too. Albums like this see the limelight all the time now, but in 2012 this was pretty revolutionary for the genre. A lot of people make the comparison that GKMC is the West Coast Illmatic, and I really can't discredit that. When you're being compared to Nas, you've already become a hip-hop legend. After this record, we were in the midst of a hip-hop renaissance, and from here forward, artists were dropping classics left and right. Now, I want to pause for a second before we get to Pimp a Butterfly, but I need to address the Savior title. A lot of people see Kendrick as hip-hop's savior, which is ironic because his whole point on the song Savior is that he wants to be looked at as a normal human being and not put on a pedestal. I don't know if he's always felt that way or if the pressure from popularity and hip-hop status just took a toll on him over time. I can't imagine releasing something like To Pimp a Butterfly, being labeled the GOAT by some, and then following that up with another album. That's some immense pressure. I think many people feel this way because no one in the mainstream was stepping up the way Kendrick did. Again, plenty of underground rappers were, but none had the status to make an impact the way he could. Not just from a rap standpoint, but from an artistry and commentary perspective. Good Kid, Mad City was Kendrick revealing his personal experience, something many other people like him could relate to, while To Pimp a Butterfly was quite literally him trying to save the world. Damn is his reaction to that not working, and Mr. Morale is him saying, okay, I need to get myself together before I try this again. We're gonna pivot to Drake for a bit because don't think for a second that he doesn't have a role in this too. Both these guys came out around the same time and both both would reach similar levels of popularity. Drake could either stay a pop star and probably remain respected for a while, or he could start rapping, and that's what he did. Whether you loved or hated Drake at this point.
Yeah, that's true. I believe Drake came out in 2006. And I think Drake came out in 2008. And Kendrick came out in 2006, I think Drake. In 2008 and 9, Kendrick. Something like that. They wasn't too far apart from each other.
I don't think many people actually cared when Drake rapped. However, they did care when he started faking his persona to act like he had nothing growing up and that he came from a difficult life. I'm not here to discredit anyone's trauma, but when you're getting into something like hip-hop, you better understand its history before you start doing things like this. The term culture vulture is thrown around a lot when people talk about Drake, and anyone with two working eyes can see that. Definition of a culture vulture is a person who adopts something from a different community and makes it their own. In Drake's case, he stole his whole look and persona from black culture, and despite having a black father, let's be honest, Drake grew up white. And there'd be nothing wrong with that if he just acted like it. All of this is just one reason people turned against him. We can also get into the material.
That's 100% facts, and I don't understand why he just don't embrace that. He would be much better off.
Narcissism, lies, manipulation, but the fact he stole from a culture that has been long oppressed and didn't even try to give back unless it made him look good, I think that's where hip-hop's hatred from Drake comes from. Now, why did I just ramble about Drake for 30 seconds? Well, I promise you it ties into Kendrick's savior theme in the sense that Kendrick saw Drake as not just a threat to hip-hop, but a threat to all the people that listen to him, especially his younger listeners. That's not even a PDF file pun, I'm dead serious. Kendrick wants people to see the greater systemic issues around the world, and all Drake was doing was delaying that for the youth. Drake was the poison, and Kendrick was tired of it, so now he forced Drake into a cage where he'll forever be trapped until he humbles himself. While Kendrick says he doesn't want the savior title, part of me feels like he wanted to cleanse hip-hop of Drake, and if his goal was to get people to stop taking him seriously, it worked. So Kendrick saved rap from its biggest threat of all time, enlightened many people in regards to systemic racism, police brutality, and poverty, united Crips, Bloods, and Pyrus on one stage, and is wearing a crown of thorns on his latest album cover. How is he not your savior? Well, let's finally hop into the actual song. On the surface, Savior is simply a song where Kendrick is warning his fans to not look at him as a god. On top of being a warning though, Savior is a call to action that tells us we need to put the work in too if we want to see change. At the beginning of the song, Kendrick mentions other rappers that people look up to, plus a sidebar to LeBron, which interestingly was supposed to be a line about Kanye. Kendrick is telling us that while these people have made a huge impact for their communities, they are no different than you and me. Sometimes it's easy to
That's true. I think a lot of us, they look at, and it's really not a lot of people's fault because the narrative and the mainstream, and they push it towards you. You know what I'm saying? They've been pushing this stuff towards you, whether it's positive or negative, and mostly negative. And I understand why Kendrick is saying this. I'm not your savior. You have to save yourself. Like, don't look to me, because the whole point of Mr. Morale and the Big Step is he was basically saying, like, I'm a normal person. I wish people stop looking at me as if I'm your savior. I have flaws, and that was the confession of everything. That's why I think that album is so much more important than all the albums he ever did. Personally, on a personal level for people. You like Kendrick, that's a personal letter to you if you like Kendrick. If you're going through certain things in your life, you know what I'm saying? From infidelity to abuse, anything. You know what I'm saying?
Get that people in history books like Malcolm X or MLK were just normal people that took action and had their actions pay off. The same thing is happening to Kendrick, but Savior is a warning to both himself and his fans. He's warning that when you blindly follow someone, it can become cult-like in the sense that you truly believe they can do no wrong. Look, the song is also Kendrick reiterating the point of when shit hits the fan, is you still a fan, in which he wants us to accept his flaws, but also understand that he can do wrong. On top of that, that, he's asking his fans to fight for what they believe in, and just because he made it this far, it's not his job to save them. It's up to them to join the movement and make a difference in their community too, and Kendrick can only make them aware of this through his work. Alright, so let's hop into the lyrics. We're not going to go through every single one because we'd probably be here for hours, but I want to highlight the very important ones and how they tie into Savior's concept. A couple very big things you'll notice in the song are references back to TPAB, especially Mortal Man, which is essentially a prologue to this track. The other thing is mentioning Tupac at the end of the song, which is very interesting because he's Kendrick's biggest idol. It makes me think that maybe Kendrick felt this way about Pac growing up, and that gave him the realization that you can have idols and inspirations, but nothing will change until you make it change. The first verse is mainly about Kendrick standing firm on his beliefs and explaining that he has the same flaws as some of the people he calls out. Therefore, it's foolish to call him your savior because he's not perfect and nobody is. The other half of the verse is about black culture and the need for unity. He calls out Black Tuesday, which if you don't know, was a police brutality protest for George Floyd, which saw people post black squares all over social media. Kendrick is criticizing the people who call this solidarity because it's not really doing anything for the black community, and if they really wanted solidarity, they'd be doing a lot more. Verse 2 is a lot of political commentary about COVID, people choosing to not voice their true opinions, and even uses Vladimir Putin to explain that we all have militant minds. The other very significant line here is Kendrick saying, "One protest for you, 365 for me." People questioned where he was during the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and he argues that every day is a fight against social injustice for him. He's arguing that for some, going to these kinds of events is just performative, and if they really cared, they'd be fighting every day without the cameras on them. This also happened.
That's 100% facts. And that was the bars that hit me the hardest. He's speaking facts. A lot of people they're virtue signal activists. They just want to look at me over here. Hey, look, I support that. But when you put them on the front line, then they like this. They're quiet. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They just want to be seen. You know what I'm saying? They view social media as a stage for them to get on and say whatever they want and not have no real pushback or consequences to it. They're keyboard warriors. That's what they are.
At a time right after TPAB released, so I can't really fault Kendrick for feeling this way. Verse 3 is the most important of the song as it ties everything up and gives us Kendrick's own experience of looking at someone as his savior. After some killer lines calling out corporate exploitation, Kendrick mentions Tupac, saying he's dead and you gotta think for yourself. After listening to Mortal Man, it's easy to see how Kendrick viewed Tupac, a savior for the black community. This is him maturing and realizing that even someone as influential as Tupac couldn't stop the cycle of violence within black communities. It takes all of us. Savior is telling you to not look at Kendrick as a messiah or god. However, it is a song asking you to be a teammate for Kendrick's movement. In the first few lines, he's literally asking you for a high five. This is Kendrick's most relevant song because we can tie it into so many of today's events. Instead of waiting for someone to come save us, it's up to us to spread awareness of the world's injustices and be on the right side of history. With what Kendrick did for hip-hop, his community, and the culture as a whole, it's so easy to view him as a messiah when in reality, he's just another one of us, and that's exactly how he wants it. In a performance at the Glastonbury Music Festival 2 years ago, Kendrick revealed that this is his favorite song on Mr. Morale. He said, "This next record I want to perform is my favorite record off that album. It's the reason, the true meaning of imperfection, and that's beautiful. No matter what you're going through, imperfection is beautiful." With such an electric rapping performance, it's easy to see why this song's so important to him. Like every record we talk about on Mr. Morale, this one is aging extremely well, and it's one to keep an eye on moving forward in all of our lives. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like.
Hey man, go over and go to his Patreon and do your thing if you guys want to, you know. Yeah, that was a pretty good video. Yeah, I don't think that Kendrick Lamar is anybody's savior. I don't think he's hip-hop savior either. I think he is an artist that people look at as a savior. And I understand what he's saying. You know, we all have to be our own heroes at one point in our life. Like, we have to be a hero for ourselves and our family. You can't look to me to be your hero. You have to stand on your own too and do your own thing as well. And if you are a hero and I'm a hero, then we all could be heroes. Not everybody could be heroes, but I get what he's saying by that. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is a very important song too. I agree with him on this. I do think that Kendrick Lamar has changed a lot of people's lives. And that goes for a lot of artists that does things that are positive. They are going to change people's lives because it's positive, and that's what it is. Even some bad artists will change your life if they do something that's positive. You know what I'm saying? But most of them, they don't do that. They don't do positive records because it doesn't sell any money. You know, it doesn't make any money for them. It don't sell, you know. So either way, if you haven't heard Savior, it's on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I believe it's on the second, the Big Steppers part. And go listen to it. And then come back and comment. Tell me what you think. Hey, man. Thank y'all for everything. I really appreciate y'all. See y'all. Peace. Bye. I told you talk. You know what it is.